This is a thing that's on the Washington Mormon Monument. All right. We'll get to it in time. Maybe I'll figure out a way to say it that actually works by then. All right, let's get started. Welcome to the UAP office. You are hired. Let's get to work. All right, we're going to talk about some of the strange evidence, things that don't make sense, the mysterious architecture and tunnels and monuments. And we're going to start off with a little bit of a European vacation and a little bit of Stonehenge.
Yeah, this country's eons old, kids. That's centuries to you and me. Charming, isn't it?
It looks like Massachusetts.
The old Pilgrims. Plymouth Rock. That's where it all started. And speaking of rocks...
Hundreds of years before the dawn of history lived an ancient race of people.
The old Pilgrims. Plymouth Rock. That's where it all started. And speaking of rocks...
Into the living rock of Stonehenge.
What the hell is this?
Nobody knows for sure, Russ.
Stonehenge.
The consensus is that it's an ancient timepiece built by the ancient Druids.
The Druids.
Well, whatever. It's been here a long time. You know, a lot of people think this was built by men from outer space.
No one knows who they were or what they were doing.
It's 2,000 years before Christ.
But their legacy remains
It's bound to be here 1,000 more.
hewn into the living rock
Russ?
Yeah.
Oh, there you are.
of Stonehenge.
Take a last look, kids. At one of man's most curious creations. Built to stand the test of time and the elements, war, you name it. A thing of glory for 1,000,000 future generations to see. And we were here.
Eiffel Tower in Paris, France. One thing that most people don't know about the Eiffel Tower is that there is a hidden room built at the top. Many say that it's more of an apartment than a room. Nobody knows why the room was built or who ever lived there.
No one knows who they were or what they were doing.
People visit the room occasionally, and it's been said that Thomas Edison spent a few days there.
Thomas Edison spent a few days there. Yeah.
Wow! They've known this all along, but they kept it a secret. The Lincoln Memorial. Many people don't notice it, but there is a door on the side of that building. Behind the door is a long staircase that leads to a large room that looks like an actual cave, and inside you'll find real stalactites. The cave was designed by humans to show the natural wonders of our world. Humans to show the natural wonders of our world. The men who built the room—
You know, a lot of people think this was built by men from outer space.
National Park Service has deemed the drawings historical graffiti.
Built by humans. Humans.
Lies a secret domain beneath the sidewalk.
Normal-sized, regular humans, just like you and me, except not as intelligent. They built things they didn't know why.
Dark, shuttered, abandoned, and almost forgotten. Architect Julian Hunt came across the site about 10 years ago.
As an architect, I pay attention to what I'm looking at when I'm walking around the city. And I remember seeing these old boarded up staircases and wondering what was down there. And the kind of local lore was they were just ventilation shafts. But I knew differently, and I just kept asking questions.
One of the things I love about Sherlock Holmes is he's not bound by social norms. He lives outside of them. He's a high-functioning sociopath. So I can identify with that a little bit. But he normally would talk and deal with the homeless people of an area to get the straight dope on what's really going on, what the truth is. Let's see what this guy does.
And finally found the kind of right person to talk to at the facilities management in the city. We got a tour. We had a police escort because there were homeless people living down here. And I was surprised by how big it was, and just an enormous hidden asset. And I was surprised by how big it was, and just an enormous hidden asset.
The space had been a trolley station back in the 1950s.
DuPont Circle had very, very terrible traffic problems, especially after they installed the streetcar system on the surface.
Beep, beep, beep. Back up there. What? They had traffic problems in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and then especially after they installed streetcars?
So that was roughly about 1920 when they began to consider putting the streetcar under the circle. So all the planning was delayed until after the Second World War.
So in 1920, how did they know there was going to be a Second World War in 1939, well, 40, 41, 42, when it's... Okay, all right, never mind. Okay, let's just move on.
They finally built it out right after the war, opened it in 1949.
Look how old this brand new tunnel looks. I mean, this new tunnel looks old.
And by that time already, the car was coming into its own, and by 1962, the whole thing shut down.
So, for 13 years, it operated. It was already... The marginal cost of continuing to operate it would have been next to nothing. If there was such traffic congestion, why all of a sudden was it not necessary? Because there are more cars? More cars? Wouldn't there be more congestion? Now you have it underground. You don't have all this congestion above ground that made it impossible to operate in the 1920s, even though in cities, like Zurich, when I was in Zurich, they had streetcars operating above ground, and they were being used, and they move along like regular cars, except they're full of people, so that reduces congestion. But never mind about that. That's Zurich, that's Europe, that's, super smart stuff that we don't understand here in the United States, because that's where Einstein went to school and all that, and so we just don't know. But anyway, let's move on.
Closed in the 1960s, it's been vacant for more than 50 years.
Okay, so get ready for the real story here. He's going to tell you that they just kind of found it the way it is, and they were trying to figure out what to do with it.
They had all kinds of proposals and couldn't quite ever figure out what to do with it.
And we'll be activating about a third of the 75,000 square feet, cleaning it up.
Getting rid of all those nasty, just awful homeless people, just clean them out of here.
And turning it into a mixed-use venue where we will try a lot of different things.
Hey, Sherlock, why don't you try making low-income housing that's suitable for humans to live in, since that's what it is already, a place for the homeless to dwell in? But no. What you do is you have to make sure that you come up with these different ideas of how the space can be used. none of which are going to be to accommodate or even allow homeless people to dwell in there, because screw them, they're homeless.
Arts and cultural things like exhibits and events, public performances, music, dance, theater, all in an effort to
accommodate the rich and make sure that the homeless people can't afford to be in there very long, because we want to kick them out and make this space that we don't know what to do with designated somehow, just so that it has been used when everybody forgot about it and nobody noticed it. No reason. I mean, it's no wonder it was a mystery about it, because the homeless people are like, man, when they find out about this place, it's all over and we're going to be back in the street in the cold.
In an effort to understand the space. We're calling the next 5 years our proof of concept phase.
In 1995, 94, they tried a food court. A small developer, local developer, actually got a permit to do it, and it failed very, very quickly.
Julian's mission is to merge old infrastructure with innovative adaptation. They've drawn inspiration from similar urban development projects in other countries.
In London for several years, the Old Vic Theatre had access to and kind of ran some tunnel space from the subway system for several years, and it was very successful. So that's a good precedent we look at. In Dusseldorf, there's a former highway space that was underground, that's been cut off and turned into a really high-end art gallery. Last year in Paris, one of the candidates for mayor, part of her platform was actually taking 7 old metro stations that are not currently being used and reprogramming them with things like a lap pool or a club or a theater space.
Somebody should walk into his home and say, this space isn't being used. We need to turn this into another theater. I mean, every idea, it's like theater, club, theater. Let's do like our ancestors. How about that? We'll go into his domicile and we'll say, this space isn't being used. We need to turn this into a temple or a tomb. I mean, it's, wow, that's a low flying plane. Okay, somebody's flying below the radar. All right, anyway, let's move on here.
These kinds of discussions are happening all over the world because...
Because why? Well, the reason is the history is all screwy, and all these cities have these underground places and old electric rail cars that are too good for the populations that live there, in many cases even today. But I am curious about the reason that they give. It'll be entertaining and well meant, but I'll probably disagree, and it probably won't really make sense, but we'll see. Let's hear it.
These kinds of discussions are happening all over the world because as cities densify, there's only so far they can go up or so far they can go out.
So when did they go down? Well, they went down and up in the 1920s or before, actually, starting in, or, well, probably way before. It doesn't make sense. What's the population been this whole time? And then now with the population at the max, they can't even utilize the space or occupy it?
Julian Hunt believes that public space is critical to communication, interaction, and a fluid social life.
Well, I can't think of anything more private than an underground space. That's why evil bad guys in movies and in real life probably, definitely, welcome the heroes to their secret underground lair. It's literally buried, so it was hidden, forgotten. I don't get it.
One of our supporters, he said, for my business in the high-tech world, I love being right on the circle because that's the place where I bump into people accidentally and I can say, hey, I got an idea. Let's set up a deal.
I don't want to detract from what these guys are doing and everything. It's good. It is. I really do believe what they're doing is good. It just rings kind of funny to me because they're saying, the guy's going to be underground and then, he's going to just like pop up out of a manhole or something and like surprise somebody from behind and Oh, hey, you want to make a deal? Come on down to my secret underground lair.
Yeah.
You know, it's perfect. It's perfect for Washington, D.C., actually. I think it's brilliant. Brilliant!
The accidental encounter, the opportunity to meet people from different places and different backgrounds is what makes culture alive.
All right, well, that's fine. Let's move on to the next one. Let's start talking about obelisks. So we'll start off where we already are, in D.C.
Washington Monument.
Now, they could have done the Washington Monument in a way that would make sense, like having it be about George Washington. But what I think is that there was an ancient monument already there that was of a certain height, and then they took down the statue that was on the top, whatever that was, and then they put up just the rest of the phallic symbol. And then this is on the Washington Monument. It's a flat earth map, footstool of the Lord.
The Washington Monument is one of America's most visited landmarks by tourists and students from the United States and, well, all over the world, in fact.
All right, well, students wouldn't normally choose to go to a big phallic symbolic object that's pointless. Well, I guess literally it has a point, but figuratively it's pointless. What does it have to do with General President George Washington? I don't know. I'm sure they have a BS story about it. Why do we count when students are forced to go there? You know, they love it, but it's not because of these monuments, these senseless monuments. It's getting out of school. It's getting out with, you know, your classmates and having a good time. That's what that's about.
In recent years, the monument was closed so that they could do some repairs on the elevator. Fortunately, there is another version pretty close by. The replica is about 13 feet high, and it's known as Benchmark A.
Well, let's follow the logic here. So if the Washington Monument's for George Washington, then the Benchmark A is for a guy by the name of Benchmark, a diminutive man, was very unpopular, very, very subservient in every way to George Washington. As kids, George Washington kicked his butt at every childhood game, and so on and so forth, and he held the Benchmark A. He was an asshole. You know, that's what the A is for. And he held the lowest position in federal office for a very short time, and it was kind of an accident that he got in there. But anyway.
The most curious thing about Benchmark A is
he was popular with the ladies. You know, how sometimes it makes no sense why a particular guy is a ladies' man. He doesn't have the qualities you would think that the ladies would go for, but he just has this way about him that has some extra special charm, and that's what made him different from George Washington. Benchmark A was, he didn't have the money, he didn't have the prestige or the status, he didn't go to the secret society meetings and slap each other's butts in the fraternities and all this stuff with all their rituals and all that crap. He was schmoozing the ladies. He was talking to them, and he was looking into their eyes and telling them, there's something about you. What is it? What is it that makes you so beautiful? How do you like my bullshit narrative so far? Well, it's going to get better. Do you want to know what they did about it? When Martha Washington found out about this Benchmark guy they called an asshole. In George's house, George Washington's house, he was only to be referred to as asshole. You could say Mr. Asshole or that asshole, or sometimes if you said some asshole, the children thought you were talking about Benchmark. But when it came time to make a monument for him, of course they thought about an obelisk. But here's what happened.
The most curious thing about Benchmark A is that it's located under a sewer lid.
Now see, that fits my bullshit narrative pretty well. But let's hear the actual, real bullshit narrative from mainstream history. And they're going to tie in mainstream science, I'm sure. So let's hear it.
It's designed to help synchronize maps and satellites in space. It's designed to help synchronize maps and satellites in space. It's designed to help synchronize maps and satellites in space.
could see me now, I'm looking at you, frozen, with a blank stare, just not moving a muscle, just speaking to you telepathically.
It also monitors the country's landmass. When it was placed in the 1880s, it was on the ground, but over the years the Earth's surface has changed, which caused it to become buried. Since then, it's been sinking about 0.5 millimeters every year. Nobody knows how far benchmark A will sink, and only time will tell.
Coincidentally, that was the same saying that everybody had about him whenever he met a lady. Heck, it could be somebody's wife. It didn't matter. Whenever he met some female of childbearing age, that's what they would say.
Nobody knows how far benchmark A will sink, and only time will tell.
All right. So it's funny how sometimes when something's sinking or moving 5 millimeters a year, they have to say it's been around for thousands, millions of years. But in this case, they're saying, well, it was rapid and then it slowed down. Also, they said satellites, but when was this thing made? In the 1800s, probably before. But are they trying to get us to think that they had satellites then? I don't know what this is. Well, I did a little research, boom, and it's 1783. Ha! Now let's think about that for a second. At that moment, in 1783, when they started having this be George Washington's monument, supposedly, he wasn't even the president. It doesn't make sense. You've just beaten the British, but it's not over. They're going to have, Revolutionary War II, the return of the Redcoats. So, but no, they're gallivanting around, just chewing the fat. Oh, well, let's make a big obelisk. George Washington, you look like a big pointy thing pointing straight up. You're just huge. And I'm going to make something that looks like that, and it's going to be your monument. Yeah. But, it's funny because it's like with all these things, you see the same exact thing. It's under construction for an extremely long time, and it has no real purpose. So guess when they finished it? What year? They started it in 1783, started talking about it. They started building it soon after. And then it was finished in 1888. 1888. What's the point? Also, they have these drawings, which are basically pictures of what it looked like before. Now, they call them concept drawings, but I don't think so.
What's an obelisk? Why an obelisk? We don't have an obelisk for Lincoln.
All right, that's enough. That's enough. All right, we'll catch you later. See ya. Also, they have these drawings, which are basically pictures of what it looked like before. Now, they call them concept drawings, but I don't think so.
It happens all the time, and then they have these excuses as to why the stone color changes, and I think they had a statue on the top. It looked like this, and they removed that statue of the previous civilization.